Welcome to the meeting of the San Francisco Public Library Commission for November 17th, 2022. The time is 4:30. I'm Margot Schaub, and I serve as the Library Commission Affairs Analyst. This meeting is being held in hybrid format, with the meeting occurring in person in the main library Corrett Auditorium and available to view or listen to on WebEx. Public comment will be taken both in person and remotely by video or call-in for each item on the agenda. We will conduct public comment with attendees in the Corrett first and then move to WebEx for public comment. Each comment is limited to 3 minutes unless otherwise noted. Members of the public can observe the meeting using the WebEx system by following the link in the library's event calendar or by calling local 1-415-655-0001 and entering access code 2491-404-8797. Attendees wishing to offer public comment virtually should raise their hand when public comment for that item is called. To make public comment when connected by phone, please raise your hand by dialing *3 to be added to the remote queue for the agenda item you intend to comment on. Individuals joining by WebEx should click the raise hand button to be added to the queue. Mike Smith with Media Service Operations will moderate WebEx virtual public comment. Mr. Smith will call upon WebEx attendees by name or by caller number to prompt each attendee who wishes to provide public comment. If we experience any technical issues with WebEx, we will recess and try to address the issue. Please try logging back into WebEx if there are technical problems. Library commissioners in attendance are President Connie Wolf, Vice President Pete Wong, Commissioners Mall, Lomax, Garaduzzi, Lopez, and Bolander.
Thank you very much. Hello and welcome to the November 17th, 2022 meeting of the San Francisco Public Library Commission. To those of you here with us in Corrett Auditorium, we're delighted to see you, and we are very pleased to welcome our virtual audiences via the WebEx platform. We have a full meeting ahead, and we will start with the Ramaytush Ohlone land acknowledgement. The area now known as San Francisco is the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples of the San Francisco Peninsula. As the original peoples of this land, the Ramaytush Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as the caretakers of this place. We recognize that we benefit from living, working, and learning on their traditional homeland. As uninvited guests, we affirm their sovereign rights as First Peoples and wish to pay our respects to the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush community. If you have not already done so, all the materials for this meeting are available to download on the Library Commission page of the library website at sfpl.org. Today we have a total of 5 agenda items, and we will begin with item number 1, which is general public comment. Operations, how many people have joined us via WebEx?
Madam President, participants currently have no commenters.
Little feedback.
We will start with general public comment from members of the public here in the Corrett Auditorium, and then take public comment from members of the public observing or listening via WebEx. General public comment is now open here in Corrett.
Good afternoon, Peter Warfield, Executive Director, Library Users Association. Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com and P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California, 94117-0544. I noticed that the agenda is missing the first 3 pages, or 850 some odd words, describing how somebody is supposed to behave in order to take part, and that also takes up 3 pages prior to the numbered items on the agenda. I couldn't understand what he said about how many people there are on WebEx, and I'd be interested to know. When you're in the room, you can generally get an idea visually. You can't when it's this way, partially remote. 2 points I have primarily to make. Probably the best known, mid-career career changer. Today announced she would not run to be leader of the House of Representatives. She was previous to her last 35 years in that position, a member of the Library Commission. And in that sense, the best-known Library Commission member probably that we have. Second, I want to talk about accountability and law-abidingness. Last month, I reported to you that the library, and in particular, Michael Lambert personally, who is responsible for providing Proposition G calendars that describe basically what meetings were held, what was going on at the meetings, what was discussed, acknowledged at the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force through Ms. Schaub that the law had been violated and that they would make no contest to Library Users Association complaint. And I see the chair is smiling. I don't know that it's funny, but the key here is that there was no accountability in terms of how that happened, why that happened, or what was going to be done to fix it. The response to the complaint was that there had been something about confusion. Here's what it said. There was some confusion about the response date for this Prop G calendar request by the library, but the library has now made the necessary corrections. What corrections? What confusion? This is a law that's been on the books for 20 years. And it specifically says the department head is responsible for making sure that it's available on time, and it was not available. It was not available on time. At the hearing, there was some questioning, and at one point there was a mention of redactions being necessary as possibly having caused a delay in the provision. There are no redaction. There's nothing redactable required in the Prop G calendar. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment here in Correct Auditorium?
Hello, my name is Marie Sapella. I'm the Executive Director of Friends and Foundation of the San Francisco Public Library. And obviously, I'm just here to say yay for the great election last Tuesday. I think we're at 82.6 still. May not go higher than that, but it is a 11-point gain on the last time. So we're all just been celebrating for a very long time. Sorry, I was on my bike. But I did want to thank you all because you sent the resolution to the Board of Supervisors from this chamber or this stage itself, and that started it at City Hall, and then it went from there onto the ballot unopposed by anyone at City Hall and anyone who wanted to send in an argument in the ballot handbook. So thank you so much, and we'll just celebrate. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further public comment here in Correct Auditorium? Seeing that there's no further comment here in Correct, we will move to our participants via WebEx. Mr. Smith, if there are any remote participants, could you please put them through?
Madam President, there are currently pause to allow additional comments to raise their hand by pressing start.
We're not able to understand you. I'm wondering if there's a different way in which we could hear you. We're just going to take a pause for a moment while we work on the technology. We do have somebody here in Correct who would like to make a public comment, so we will open it back up here in Correct. You are welcome to make a public comment. You will have 3 minutes when you begin, so please step up to the microphone. We're ready for you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So let me tell you something.
Please step up to the microphone. Please step up to, yeah, thank you.
We can hear you.
We want to hear you.
Please, I appreciate you. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I was on the 5th floor inside the glass. This is the second time. I was in the glass room. I went to get a World Book Library, the World Book Library. Okay, because I needed something for my mouse. There was a man. Okay, huge man. He was kept going back and forth. And the librarian was talking. I have the pictures, I have the videotape, I have the, the sound. So the guy kept going back and forth, and so your librarian on the 5th floor, which I showed you, Michael, okay, this guy told me to shut up and go inside the room. go back inside my glass enclosure, okay? The guy on the 5th floor currently, okay? I said nothing. This is what I did. I went back and forth, while they were having their polite, their conversation. I don't know what conversation they were having, okay? But the guy asked him for help, okay? But he kept going back and forth. So he told me to shut up and go back inside my enclosure. He said, shut up, go back in your enclosure, okay? But that's not the first time. The first time I asked him, I said, can I have you put your, to download some information, okay? And he said, I have to look for it. And I said, okay. And he said to me, well, I can't find it. I said, you're a library, you should be able to find it. Okay, he said, I can't find it. So this first time, and what's her name? The woman, what's her name? Michael, I'm talking.
Chief of Maine, Katrin Reimuller.
Exactly, okay. So this is the second time she came over to talk to me and to talk to him and told him he was wrong. So I was sitting at the computer terminal and he came over to me and he apologized. The very first time he apologized. Now, okay, scared for my life. I don't know what this 6'5", I'm 5'2" on a good day. Okay, so I don't know who this gentleman is, okay? He's about 6'5", okay? And came over to me on the second time and told me to shut up and go in the enclosure. Okay? So I'm sorry, my time is up, but I'm
Your
just
time
wanting
is
to
up.
let you know
Thank you so
that
much.
is not called for, okay?
Thank you. We really appreciate your stepping forward.
I appreciate you, but I just want to let you know what an employee of yours did to me.
And we have listened, and we will follow up on that. We really appreciate your stepping
I
forward
also
and letting
sent
us
you
know.
an email.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, but also, one more thing.
Well, we do have limits of 3 minutes per participant, so we need to be consistent for
appreciate
all
your
the
time.
participants.
I
So thank
appreciate
you.
your time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. We appreciate your letting us
And
know.
please, hopefully your employees are not, I was scared for my life.
We understand that, and we will address it.
I was scared for my life, so I left. And, I forgot to tell
Thank you.
One more thing, okay? He told her, the manager, he said, I'm leaving, I don't have to take this. So he said, I'm leaving, I don't have to take this, and he walked out on her and left her to deal with me, okay? And she was very nice and very polite. The woman we just talked to, she's very nice and very polite.
I'm very sorry that happened to you, and I'm more than happy to speak with you more in depth, but you are limited to 3 minutes this evening. I'm going to have to ask you to step away from the podium at this time.
I will, thank you.
Thank you very much.
No touch me. But I'm just saying.
So now that is there any further public comment here in Correct? Hearing there's no further public comment, we're going to try again to go to the WebEx. And Mr. Smith, is it possible to let us know if there are any participants in the queue who would like to make public comment?
Madam President,
Thank you very much. There are no commenters in the queue. Seeing there are no further comments, public comment is now closed, and we will now turn to agenda item number 2. Agenda item number 2 is a discussion on the fiscal year 24-25 budget. This is a really important start of a budget discussion that will take place over the next few months, and we really look forward to participating in this conversation. This is always a very exciting and dynamic part of our discussions among the commissioners. And I just do want to reiterate what we just heard, that the Proposition F was approved by overwhelming support by the citizens of San Francisco, and I just want to thank all of the citizens of San Francisco for their incredible support. This certainly makes our budget discussion a lot more lively, robust, and exciting to know that for the next 25 years, we have the city's commitment to ensuring that the Public Library of San Francisco is a dynamic resource, evolving and supporting the citizens in all of their needs and requests. So we now turn it over to City Librarian Michael Lambert.
Thank you, President Wolf, and good evening, Library Commissioners. The FY 24-25 budget discussion begins in earnest this evening, and our CFO, Mike Fernandez, will be delivering this presentation. In setting the table for Mike, I would just preface by saying the library will look to take a conservative approach this cycle as we continue to await budget instructions from the mayor's office and wait to see how our revenue projections are shaping up later this year. That being said, the library remains in a strong position to deliver a high level of service for our community over the next 2-year cycle. It's also worth noting that our strategic planning process will straddle the current fiscal year Q3 and Q4 and extend into the next fiscal year 24. As such, we'll seek to stay the course with our familiar strategic priorities, and we'll be poised to revisit the second year FY 25 and the following budget cycle when we will have a new strategic plan in place. We appreciate your consideration and guidance as we navigate this transitory environment. All of this, of course, as you mentioned, President Wolf, is against the backdrop of securing an overwhelming majority of confidence from the San Francisco voters. 82.6% affirmative on Proposition F for a 25-year renewal of the Library Preservation Fund. And now I'll turn it over to our CFO, Mike Fernandez.
Thank you, Librarian Lambert. Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for having me. Today I'll be providing you a brief overview of the coming budget process, as Mike also eloquently laid out for me. Thank you. We'll start by walking through what's approved last cycle, what the calendar is going to look like for this cycle's approval, and what we can anticipate as far as revenue goes, at least what we know right now, and some themes guiding the investments we're considering at this time. We would like to take this time to hear from you on our themes and any direction you'd like to provide us. That said, it's early enough in the process that we still have quite a few unknowns, and I'll touch on that here in a few minutes. So first we'll start with our last approved budget. Should look pretty familiar. As a quick reminder for those out there who may not be aware, the fiscal year runs from July 1st, goes through June 30th. We typically refer to them by the June date or the end date. So right now we say we're in fiscal year 23, and next year will be fiscal year 24. The budget that was passed by the Board of Supervisors and signed by the mayor last summer included a budget for the year we're in now, as well as the budget for next year, 24. The $186.87 million budget you see for fiscal year 24 is the best projection of our revenues at the time and planned expenditures for the upcoming year. Through this process, we plan to build on this budget as our foundation and budget for the next year, fiscal year 25. We have focused our efforts as an organization on reopening and regaining our level of service. Even through the pandemic, we were able to hold our org chart steady so we could do that. Under library leadership and the hard work of library staff, we prioritized restoring our hours, getting people materials and ways to meet patrons where they are, whether that's in person or online. Last cycle, we invested in book giveaways to build home libraries, targeted acquisitions to have more inclusive collections, building out our capacity for racial equity manager, increase our digital access, and respond to our patrons by expanding our e-collections. We have begun implementing our fiscal year 23 financial coaching through our Work It program. We just had a successful workshop this past month, which provided a full day training, as well as the opportunity to connect to a certified financial planner for those who needed it or were looking for that. We are continuing to seek forgiveness of debts. Modifications by the board were quite modest, as you can see, $500,000 and less than that for 24, and we did not receive any add backs. So looking at sources, as you can see, the annual appropriation for the Library Preservation Fund actually makes up now 94% of our budget for the current year we're in right now, 99% if you include fund balance. As a reminder, the money is included therein shall be expended or solely used by the library department, subject to the budgetary and fiscal provisions of the charter, to provide library services and to construct, maintain, and operate our library facilities. There was a question last time I was here as to what the transaction volume looked like for our POSS system, so I'd like to just give you a brief update since we're talking about sources. We reviewed the last 27 months, and we've seen a pretty steady $2,000 a month average total across all 28 locations for lost books and visitor cards, which are the primary driver. So again, it's a pretty small universe of transactions for the POSS system. So let's take a look at the calendar. Now that we're looking at the path that's really charted out in front of us here on this Gantt chart, this is our budget cycle calendar. It pretty much well aligns with last year's budget calendar, since we don't really quite know yet. We are waiting on instructions from the mayor's office. We do anticipate the department phase will end around President's Day in February, which means we're working toward an action item for you all to approve at no later than February. We plan on at least 2 more presentations before you, so we'll come back in December and in January, which should provide enough time for you all to consider and take action early in February as we have in years past. In the December meeting, we'll introduce the budget investment proposals for discussion and input, and for January, we'll provide an update to those proposals. This will allow us to present budget options in February meeting for your consideration and approval. Going. I think we're all very excited to talk about Prop F. So I'd like to just take a minute here to touch on the election. With great help from the Friends of the Public Library, our patrons, your leadership, and countless hours from dedicated staff here at the library, and with unanimous support from the board of supervisors, which was mentioned earlier, we brought a historic measure to the voters of San Francisco. It was first passed, as you know, in 1994, renewed in 2007, and we have the privilege of operating with the dedicated funding from the city approved by the voters of San Francisco. This year, we asked the voters to consider renewing our set-aside for 10 years longer than before, making a unique pledge to learning and community that most systems can really only dream of having. Unique, not just in its longevity, but we negotiated a recession protection provision to allow our funding to snap back to prior levels in the event of a downturn and recovery, saving years of otherwise low funding, and what can only be described as a reflection of all of your efforts. The voters resoundingly approved this measure, securing the library's financial future. So thank everybody. Sorry. Yeah. As I mentioned, now is the time for gathering our priorities, and in preliminary conversations with department leadership as an organization, we use our strategic priorities to plan our future investments. While we're still early in the process, we have observed some themes. First is the leadership of the SFPL is dedicated to the task of preparing for our future, providing the space needed to complete the coming strategic planning process and to build upon it in future cycles. We have major capital projects moving forward with our partners at Public Works, as well as building the support needed for the recently created Chief of Public Services role that has visibility over all of public services, as well as our next CIO. Priorities in, sorry, I think my notes got lost up there. One second, sorry. Okay. The second responsibility we feel the need to demonstrate to the voters who've entrusted us with the set aside for the last 30 years or so is by being good stewards. We will continue to ensure that we have the physical spaces that can meet our role as hubs for the communities in San Francisco. Part of this is to complete the transition of the HASA program from from HSH to SFPL, and to take full ownership and accountability for our layered approach to services for all library users. Another aspect of being good stewards is to continuously review our expenditures and make updates to our budget. While this is not a glamorous process, it does enhance our transparency and does improve our reporting. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you all for your time and your consideration. The team here is happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mike. And I just want to reinforce some of the other additional information on that last slide, that we are going to seek to continue investing in our major capital projects so that we can complete the major renovation of the Mission branch, the Chinatown branch, and continue building the budget for a new Ocean View branch library. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike, for your thoughtful presentation, full of a lot of information. Before we open this up to discussion with the commissioners, we'll open it up to public comment. So public comment will begin here in Corrett Auditorium and then be followed by those participating via WebEx. Public comment is now open on item number 2 on the agenda.
Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com, and P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California 94117-0544. I wish you had put into the agenda that you would be discussing Prop F. That's certainly correct that there was a big vote in favor of it. I have to say that some of the things I've heard are simply very problematic, to say the least. Restoring hours. I have not yet heard any commitment to restore the pre-COVID hours. You have systematically chopped 1 hour from every single library that had a 9 p.m. closure, typically twice or 3 times a week. You've chopped it back to 8 o'clock. And that also makes difficulties for library programs. I understand that libraries typically like to have the place finished with the programs an hour before closing, and that puts a very shortened evening as a prospect for the users, and it shortens very much for people who work or go to school or anything else during the day. You should have a goal of restoring and even increasing the hours. More inclusive collections, I don't know what that means, but your debookification, your huge expenditures on electronic books, which are only accessible to people who have the particular technology, and your refusal to have any of that technology here, so that when I walk in, if I don't have a Kindle, I can't see a book that's on Kindle. And you're more and more having books only in electronic format. That's a very limited audience and not inclusive. I'd like to know if you're going to have 2 meetings in February or 1. You've typically put down 2 meetings on the calendar, and I think a lot of people depend on the final meeting being the approval, and then you don't have it. You make the approval on the first meeting. The so-called renewal of the Library Preservation Fund was, when it was first renewed, and still a falsehood from literally the first word. It was a complete rewrite of the original, and it toppled from its place in as a priority the maintenance of the system and then the use of any additional money on a priority basis for books and open hours. It was not intended for construction, and you've tried ever since and made ever since construction to be an inclusion. I'd like to know what you're going to do with respect to books and accessibility for everyone. And also, there was mention of HASA. I think that those should be full-time professional jobs and not just part-time jobs. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Any further public comment here in Corrett? We'll now turn to WebEx, participants in WebEx. Are there any people in the queue who would like to participate?
Madam President, at this time, there are no additional commenters in the queue. I will pause briefly to allow other commenters to join. Madam President, there are no commenters in the queue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. So public comment is now closed on item number 2, and we will now turn to the commissioners to ask questions, make comments, and I know, Mike, I know you're available. You might want to step up. So do we have any public comment? Commissioner Bolander.
Sure. So thanks for the presentation. A couple of questions. So when we're looking at this year's budget, how are we dealing with inflation, and where are those adjustments coming from? I know last year they had to obviously adjust that, so that's one. And then second, just wanted to clarify on the revenue per month total is $2K per month across all branches, everything.
Yep, that's all in. Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah. So on the inflation question, it shows up on the expenditure side. We'll be escalating based on projections of what we've done in the past, what our planned expenditures are, as well as incorporating any new proposals that folks have. On the revenue side, the general fund gets hit in many ways from that, and so we really rely on the controller's office to give us those revenue side projections of what those will actually look like. We do have a bit of a buffer, and I think my notes kind of lost it there, of about around $4 million, anticipating there would be some, a higher inflation that they had assumed in probably May of last year, although the last official update was in March. So we are planning for that. It's kind of kudos to the prior leaderships, especially that the health of the fund balance that we carry currently looks certainly sufficient to do it. I know that I know that inflation is a big concern, and we are looking at it across the board, and we'll continue to work with the controller's office to get those projections in line. We won't be the only department affected by it as well, so they do look at it citywide as well.
So along those lines, are they going to also, when will we have guidance about the recession? I know part of the stipulation in here is there's certain clawbacks or stop, I don't know exactly the words that they used. I'm assuming someone makes a call on that, and then we get to know about it. So do we anticipate when that's going to happen? I know it's obviously dynamic, and the world is a weird place now, but I just, inflation's bad. I mean, it's getting a little better. But just if we are going to go into a recession, just making sure that we've got the ducks in a line, and clearly that's going to impact some of the future projects, because obviously we need to take care of the folks that are working here, and I just wanted some clarity on that and how we're going to work through that.
That's a great question. Yeah, we will get information. We're anticipating information in either December or January. The controller's office won't give me an exact date because they probably can't at this point. They are updating other folks as well on that. There was a recommendation recently at the Capital Planning Committee that they're looking at only a 6% increase on the construction side with a 5% stabilization after that. So that looks fairly promising. So seeing it as roughly flat, I think, or I shouldn't say flat, but roughly stable, that's about, what we would be similar to. The last March report for 25, I think, had around 4.5% anticipated revenue increase. So if expenditures rise at about 5%, that's a delta of only 0.5% that we're missing on 25. We won't, it's all conjecture until we actually see that, though.
Right.
And we're anticipating that December, January.
Okay, and I'm assuming we'll have options to look at depending on the scenario of, winter's coming. Analogy that I love to use. Okay.
And I would anticipate also another March revise again that they'll do, but that's after the February approval. So the timing wise is
right.
Is not great.
I mean, again, I think
this body.
The thing that's just a little uncertain, right? I mean, generally in the world right now. I just want to make sure that we are planning for contingencies. Clearly, we want to do great things, but we also have to make sure that we keep the, keep the lights on, as they say. And I just see in everything out there, macroeconomics and just generally, we need to have some of those scenarios to look at and make sure we're prepared, so.
Yeah, and we as the library, like I said, we're kudos to the prior leadership, we've done a really good job of keeping an internal fund balance, so we're not completely reliant on the city's fund balance as well. So we have, a little buffer there. That's really nice to have.
Yes, rainy day fund for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bolander, for bringing up those very important points. Other comments from Commissioner Lomax Garaducci?
Thank you so much, Madam President. Thank you so much for this presentation. I had a question about the workforce development resources. Could you describe what some of those additional resources, this is under the responsible stewardship. It said bringing social worker and workforce development resources into SFPL. I know that you've had I know a bit about the robust workforce development, but I was just wondering, is there any new things to add, or is it more of a matter of expanding it to various branches?
Right now, what we're working on, absent any the proposals that we'll be bringing to you in a month, what we're working on continuing is the effort we've been doing to bring that accountability in-house. So we've had a really great partnership with homelessness services, but we've made the decision. We started the process actually last budget to bring some of the FTE in-house, and we're continuing that process as we speak. We're still finalizing what that will actually look like, but it's looking to be a substantial investment in that area, and we're looking to continue to build on that. Some of that probably will come through the strategic planning as well, so it may not all appear in this next cycle. It may be a little bit incremental, but that's what we're looking to at the moment.
Thank you.
And
Thank you, Commissioner.
just to add a little bit more clarification on that point, our social worker program in particular, it began as a partnership with the Department of Public Health, then it morphed into a work order agreement with the Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing. So we're looking to transition our full-time psychiatric social worker from that department to work directly for the public library. And the team of HASAs, the Health and Safety Associates, we're seeking to transition them from contract workers to employees of the library as well.
Thank you. That provides a clarity. I thought that's what you were thinking
Yes.
of, but I wasn't sure.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Lopez Garaducci. That was a great question as well. Any other comments from other commissioners? I think we can pull this to a conclusion, and thank you very much, Mike, for your wonderful presentation. And I just want to sort of add that the irony, of course, is that in the difficult times of a city and the economic challenges that we're facing and we will continue to face, the library becomes even more important and vital. And so we do depend on the incredible efforts of the staff to keep providing those resources as the residents of San Francisco need more and more as the situation becomes more challenging for each family and each individual. So just want to thank the staff for their incredible planning. They're projecting and working on the budget and knowing there are going to be different scenarios depending on where the city falls with its own budget. And then, of course, doing the great job they do for implementation. So many thanks to everybody, and especially to you for your great presentation. So now we will move on to item number 3, which is the city librarian's report.
Thank you, President Wolf. We have a number of presentations this evening, and I'm pleased to introduce our first presenter, our Director of Communications, who will be tag teaming with our Chief of Community Programs and Partnerships, Kate Patterson, with Michelle Jeffers speaking to our FY22 annual report. And Kate, would you like to?
Oh, yeah. Good evening, commissioners. It is, here we are. It's my pleasure to present to you this year's annual report. At San Francisco Public Library, we like to have fun with our annual reports. Rather than just serve up some data and call it a day, we like to tell a story. And this year was interesting because it felt like we were both in and out of the pandemic. It felt very transitional, with branches reopening, in-person public programming resuming, and service hours expanding to 7 days a week. While it may not have felt as dramatic as the previous year, a lot happened last year, and as Michael articulates in his opening letter, if we had to sum it up, the word recovery would encapsulate this particular moment in our history. When we think about the word recovery in the library's context, we think about the recovery of our system, restoring service, welcoming patrons back in the building, etc. We also think about the recovery of our staff, who transitioned back into their roles after deploying as disaster service workers and overcoming the challenges that we all face during this very difficult time. We think about our patrons and how they are recovering psychologically, socially, and economically. And we think about our city at large and the recovery of its economy and other basic city functions. And the thing that tells that story the best is the San Francisco Public Library Explorer Map. Hands down, one of the most joyful and successful marketing projects of the last fiscal year, and award-winning. You may recall that we run the Best in Show PR Excellence Award from the California Library Association last year. To remind you, the goals of the Explorer Map are to rekindle love for our branches, celebrate the unique identities of its neighborhoods, and build bonds through staff and community interaction, and also to help support the economic recovery of local businesses and commercial corridors that were hard hit during the pandemic. I want to take this moment to recognize the incredible work of our graphic designers who made both the Explorer Map and the annual report. First is Michelle McNeil, who created the Explorer Map and all of its fun little inhabitants, and Betty Ho, who always goes above and beyond with the annual report. Like last year, Betty has put all kinds of rich details into the report for everyone's reading pleasure. I also want to give a shout out to Jamie Wong and Lisa Weddle, the map originators, because they really created this foundation on which we continue to build. And on behalf of all of us, I want to thank our designers and our team for hitting it out of the park once again. The annual report replicates an epic Explorer Map walk and takes readers on a journey to each of our locations to get a holistic and in-depth view of the library's recovery. But before we can hit the road, because this is an annual report, we must dazzle you with data. And up first are just some basic information about our circulation. More than 11 million items split evenly, almost evenly, between physical and e-materials brought tons of joy to our patrons. Number of visits, 2.4 million. And because this was such a big transitional year, all of the new hires we made, 161 new hires, 106 in the branch division alone. So the HR team was very, very busy last year. We also have average daily users showing our progressive recovery over the year and everyone's favorite, the top 5 circulating titles. I personally love the top 5 because I love what it says about the zeitgeist and what's popular at the time. So always love seeing that. As we do every year, we celebrate all of our great programs. Last year, we saw the return of in-person story times, which was a huge milestone for us. At the same time, we said goodbye to Sweet Stories, which entertained so many families in the safety of their own homes during the height of the pandemic. We had 1,870 youth programs and 1,443 adult programs last fiscal year, which drew a total audience of more than 100,000 people. As part of our racial equity plan, our racial equity action plan, each year we report on the library's racial equity work and the demographics of its leadership. This year was notable because we said goodbye to our inaugural Racial Equity Committee and its co-chairs, Alejandro Gallegos and Shauna Sherman, and we said hello to Naomi Jelks, our new Racial Equity Manager. On behalf of all of us, I want to thank the outgoing committee and co-chairs for their groundbreaking work developing the Racial Equity Action Plan. This fiscal year, they also accomplished the most comprehensive staff survey to assess the library's progress on its racial equity initiatives and developed a racial equity lens tool to guide staff in their planning to ensure that communities of color are centered in the library's initiatives. Bravo. Also, I want to note that our jails Jail Services and Reentry Team also had a banner year. You may recall that they received a $2.5 million grant from the Mellon Foundation to expand library service to justice-involved patrons nationwide. And they responded to almost 2,000 reference by mail letters and circulated more than 125,000 books. So, good job. Okay, so now our journey begins. We're not going to go to each location, so don't worry. But I hope you get your maps and that you do. So for the annual report, we reached out to every branch to ask them to share what they thought were their highlights from last year. And as you will see, the responses were very personal. Every submission expressed relief about returning to in-person service and how happy the patrons were to be welcomed back inside our buildings. There are lots of heartwarming anecdotes from patrons and staff about their experiences this year. Each entry gives you an insight into the unique culture and community of each branch. And of course, we love the love. So the annual report is sprinkled with all kinds of wonderful patron comments. And I particularly love this quote from Portola branch manager Nicole Tremaine Germain. We always welcome the community with open arms and are proud to be the thriving community center of the Portola. Each day is a wonderful reunion with the people of the Portola. As one loyal patron, Roland, commented, "You were the friends I can never forget." And because Betty always goes above and beyond with these annual reports, she has woven in the history of each branch onto the pages so that there's a through line between past and present. And we can't forget Mobile Services, who this year launched the Swing Into Stories series, which brought story times to our beautiful parks. And they were also at all of the major community events, making them majorly fun, like the Warriors Black History Month, Celebration of the Chase, Dia de los Niños, and Extravaganza. Mobile Services served close to 17,000 patrons and gave away more than 63,000 books. Go MOS. Next stop on the tour is the main library, where we take a floor-by-floor look at the year's highlights. The Maine Children's Center celebrated the return of in-person story times, including our beloved Drag Queen Story Hour. And Children's Services librarian Elizabeth Perez gets a shout out for her incredible outreach work with John Muir Elementary. And there was music in the mix again, with teens taking advantage of the audio studio once again. On the third floor, we had a banner year with the exhibits The Coquettes, Acid, Drag, and Sexual Anarchy, Ode to Us, a celebration of Black hair, and Black Excellence, Black Invention. And we loved having Mayor Breed visit the African American Center for a reception for Black hair that included her friends and colleagues. The Chinese Center also hosted Silent Spikes, following the footsteps of Chinese railroad workers, which garnered some wonderful media coverage and support from the local Chinese community. They also had a powerful exhibit about Chinese women who contributed to advancing civil rights, and a community celebration to launch free Mandarin lessons at some of our branch libraries. On the fourth floor, we celebrate the triumphant return of the Art, Music, and Recreation Center's Thursday Movies at Noon film series in the Cret, which I believe was the first in-person program at the Maine. So that was pretty groundbreaking for its time. We also revisit the work we did to support patrons with their economic recovery, with some highlights from the Business Science and Technology Center and their programming, which included Financial Planning Day, Financial Literacy Month, and Small Business Week, which alone served more than 1,500 people, in addition to the 7,000 patrons they drew through their Work It program series. The Bridge on the fifth floor reported that enrollment for their 3 literacy programs, Project Read, ESL for Adults, and Fog Readers, increased by 25%, and that they served more than 4,000 patrons through their digital literacy trainings. With a grant from the California State Library, the Digi Center digitized an important archive of LGBTQ history, including Harvey Milk's speeches. And at Book Arts and Special Collections, we got to host the former Irish ambassador to the U.S., Daniel Mulhall, who was treated to a behind-the-scenes look at our special James Joyce collection. The History Center also helped reunite 2 long-lost friends who were separated by a Japanese internment camp during World War II, and got to collaborate with the San Francisco Arts Commission on its groundbreaking COVID Command Center Artist in Residency program, which included an exhibition at City Hall. Many people may not know, but the Main is home to the team of librarians who do LibChat. And so we thought it'd be fun to break down that work and to celebrate what they do. They answered an astonishing 128,000 inquiries last year and responded to more than 11,000 chats. So bravo to that team. We also had fun sharing some of the love and gratitude they've received. So they get some complaints, but they also get a lot of love. And one patron said, SFPL rocks, and kudos to the great support staff. Now I'd like to ask Michelle to come up and complete our journey.
Thanks, Kate. I'm going to try to move this down a little bit. Thanks. I get to talk about our friends, the Friends of the Library, and our grant expenditures for this year. So thank you for continuing to listen about our journey. I'm happy to report, and this feels so crazy to say, that we spent more than $500,000, $573,320 last year in our grant funds, and that we covered all our categories this year, which included the dedicated funds for main library programs, branch library programs, and that really used it to celebrate their communities as they reopened for in-person services. And we also celebrated our system-wide adult and youth programs that are tied to our cultural awareness months. As you can see, our fabulous summer learning program that you've previously heard about gets a robust level of funding from Friends and goes to good use all summer long. We also made some decent expenditures in our donor restricted funds. That's what we call them, which the biggest funding area there was really the Wiley Innovation Fund. And we used that innovation fund for one of the major initiatives was the cross-platform, multi-platform marketing that we did with the Work It program that you guys previously heard about. And we also use that fund to support our racial equity work with bringing in speakers and staff training. We do a lot of staff training with our Friends funds, and these donor funds also include dedicated funds for things like the Hormel LGBTQIA Center, the African American Center, and the History Room. Just to dig a little deeper on examples of how we get by with the help from our friends. Some photos of our friend-funded programs, which include bringing in nationally known authors like Cory Doctorow, special musical entertainment and open house programs at the branches, and cultural heritage events with our Chinese Center. It also enables us to support hundreds of connected community and STEM crafting programs for families and children, such as this one that we brought to SF MoMA last year on one of their family days. And it also supports staff development and training opportunities. Here's an example up in the upper right is our youth services staff getting to visit the Presidio's tunnel tops for a staff development meeting. And as we already see a lot more programming, training, and opportunities happening this year in fiscal year 23, we anticipate that there will be an even greater use of our Friends funds in the coming year. And finally, just a thank you. I hope this report inspires you and our patrons to venture out and discover a new pocket of our beautiful library system and city. And most importantly, we hope that it shows how invested we are in our community and that we are here for our residents of the city and county of San Francisco every step of the way. And I also just want to, because she can't really blow her own horn, that Kate Patterson also, she thanked a lot of our staff, but she really pulled together the just scores of submissions that came from every department in the library to pull this all together. So thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Kate. What a banner year. It was really historic in so many ways, and it's wonderful how you encapsulated all of that. Of course, thank you to our friends and foundation of the San Francisco Public Library for all your support as well. Our next presentation really is a continuation of our annual report. We want to present on our first quarter progress of the current fiscal year. And this is going to be a collaborative effort today. We have our Assistant Chief of Branches, Terry Carlson, our Acting Chief of the Main Library, Katrin Reimuller. You're going to hear from Michelle Jeffers again, and also our Chief Analytics Officer, Randy McClure. But first up to the podium is our Assistant Chief of Branches, Terry Carlson. And I want to take this opportunity just to acknowledge Terry for her promotion. She went from the Acting Assistant Chief of Branches into the permanent role on October 17th. She is a seasoned veteran of our branches division, and it is my pleasure to hand her this remote control first to kick us off.
What an honor.
I think Michelle and Kate has covered all, but I'm here to give you a little bit of highlight about the branches. Again, my name is Terry Carlson. I'm the Assistant Chief of Branches. So here are some highlights for the branches. As of October 2022, all 27 branches have reopened for 7-day service. And some of the highlights are we open on the weekends as well as evenings. And most of all, we have our Mission Temp site. We open in 1234 Valencia, and we're very excited about that. We had our kickoff at Noe Valley for also opening all the branches 7 days a week, and our very own city librarian already had a prior event commitment, but he took the time and came and did the kickoff. So excellent. Thank you so much for supporting staff on that. Our next slide, we have our open houses, and it's really exciting with all of our open houses throughout the branches. Here we have Marina Branch. We have all the staff that participate. They booked various different programs to welcome all of our patrons back to our libraries and including all of the programs as well. Our annual open house events comes back from the neighborhoods and restoring, including adult, children's, and teen programs. So we had a blast time, as you can see with this picture here. And adult programs, this includes Tai Chi, music, walking tours, craft program, book clubs, gardening classes, and many more that Kate has mentioned earlier. We also had Mandarin classes, which is very popular. As you can see, the program, music program here with the flute. And our most popular, of course, is youth programs. And as you all know, is story times. And we've restored all of that throughout the branches. Every branch have at least one program throughout the week. STEM programs, arts and crafts, and of course the all-time popular magicians, clowns, and we also have other presenters that we've invited as well. And in partnership with the collections and technical services, we have also gave out brand new books for youth and kids. And as you can see here, we have what happened to that picture? Anyway, we also had tabling with at some of these locations to do outreach, giveaway books, and school outreach. So kids just love holding new books, and parents are just so excited to bring their kids to a lot of these open houses and getting all these new books. And not only that, there's a lot of giveaways, such as summer reading tote bags. So that's kind of the highlight for the branches, very exciting. And now I'm going to turn this over to my colleague over at the Main for their update, Katrin Ryan-Miller. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Good evening, Commissioners, Michael, Maureen, members of the public. So the Main Library experienced its 1-year anniversary of being fully reopened in the first quarter in September. All floors, all services, and all hours. So that's exciting. I feel like that's a mark to say we're putting this closure and pandemic behind us, and I'm really glad that the branch division has joined us, and they've been able to do that. I want to highlight some of the programs that we've had in the first quarter, certainly not all of them, but I know next further in the slide deck, you're going to see some statistics about the programming numbers, which really are shooting up in the first quarter, but I wanted to share a few programs here. So for adult programming at the Main, in the top right, you see the Joy Project, which was the Del Sol String Quartet, clearly performing on the Larkin Street steps. These were original pieces of music written in the summer of 2020 to inspire joy and create community. And you know, you can never have enough joy. If you go clockwise over to the pictures from the Carrette, that's the Western and Eastern Rhythm concert that was organized by our Chinese American Center librarian, Hai-Ching Chen. It included the world-renowned master violin maker, and I hope I say this right, Cao Shun-kun, and dozens of other musicians around the Bay Area that held a concert combining Chinese and Western music. They also had a display of Chinese traditional musical instruments on display. The last picture in the bottom left is Changemakers, African Americans in San Francisco who made a difference. This was a program put on by the African American Center. It was a hybrid event, and it highlighted a book created at USF by diverse scholars there, entitled Changemakers, Biographies of African Americans Who Made a Difference. And the discussion was about the murals, the 95 murals at the Ella Hill Hutch Community Center, and highlighting them. These murals are of important African Americans in San Francisco history. For youth programs, start on the left side, getting that right. On the left side, that's Family Fun Day that was held on the Fulton Street steps. You see Mr. Jim doing a story time there. We had about 200 attendees enjoying story time, art activities, play to learn activities, clowns, bubbles, and also receiving their Scholar at Home book packets to start their own home libraries. In the top center, that's one of our story times. That's Spanish bilingual story time. We have 3 story times every week now, Spanish bilingual, Cantonese bilingual, and one in English, and we'll be expanding more early in the new year. Over on the top right is a teen event, a clothing swap, and kind of take old clothes, make new clothes, Project Runway style. And that's a girl learning to sew. That was a collaboration with Community Programs and Partnerships and the Department of the Environment. So that teens had a lot of fun there. Below that are pictures of our first in-person youth workers at the mix since closure. So we had some youth workers during the summer, and they came in and participated and helped out in the mix and got paid for it. It's a workforce development program as well. And then on the bottom middle is a new program for middle schoolers. It is a portfolio preparation class for students who are interested in applying to arts-related high schools like SOTA. This was a live drawing class, and I've seen some of the drawings from the portfolio work, and some of them are excellent. They were submitted too late to put in the slides. But that really helps kids organize a portfolio that don't have the resources or their parents don't have the time to help them get that together to apply for SOTA, which is a big lift for everybody. And that's some of what's been happening at the Main. Michelle's going to share more from Community Programs and Partnerships.
Thanks, Katrin. Remain Michelle Jeffers, Community Programs and Partnerships. Thank you. I won't go too long, but I just wanted to say that programming is clearly back. We're just seeing such tremendous interest. We're seeing crowds come back into the library for programs, and really that's the name of the game of what we're trying to do. We had an adult program led by Tonga Wyson Martin, the poet laureate, who brought in younger, less famous poets to read and talk and hear and play music in the African American Center, which was a huge success. We've talked a little bit about Swing Into Stories. This is an example. Our Swing Into Stories have become so popular that the fire chief wanted to come out with us and brought a crew of firefighters with them. So we had a beautiful firefighter-related Swing Into Stories Day at Golden Gate Park, and a fire truck came out with them. So the kids got to climb all over a fire truck. It was the most successful storytime event I've ever been to. Just let me tell you a personal story too. I was out to lunch last week with one of my very favorite children's librarians in the system, who also happens to be my daughter, who's a newly minted children's librarian in the system. And we were having lunch outside in the neighborhood where she lives and works. And a little girl came up in a full-on mermaid costume and was just like visibly like vibrating with excitement that she saw her Storytime librarian like out in the wild, as you will, just like so excited. Her name was Rhea, and Maddie was like, I'll see you next week at the next Storytime. It's so great to see you. I do eat lunch in real life. Anyway, it was just so nice because we all think, our children are rock stars. And so it's really nice to see that happen in real life. So, we also have seen our exhibition team just do tremendous work. Really going all out. Our number of exhibitions has just increased so much this year. We had this fabulous Global Library Project exhibit in the Jewett Gallery right out here with a related program with a Ukrainian heritage celebration, because the Global Library Project included libraries from all over the world, really, but including in the Ukraine that the photographer Robert Dawson had interviewed and talked to and organized that program for us. And then we've talked many times about the Black Excellence, Black Invention exhibit, and it was so lovely to see that travel around, and that has ended up at the Potrero and Bayview libraries. And we had press conferences out at the Potrero, so bringing it out to the neighborhoods, the exhibitions team is just really, like, truly for the first time in my history here, really all over the system with exhibits. And I wanted to bring up this. This is an interesting innovation that also happened in the first quarter. It's what we're calling our Tech Up Forward program. And you'll definitely hear more about it with a bridge update later this year. But we began distributing refurbished computers as part of this program. It pairs donated laptops with computer education. Friends of the library collected the donated laptops for us. They helped us support the program. We wiped them all clean, we refurbished them, and we paired the giveaways with a 4-week course in computer basics so people would know how to use it. The classes in the first quarter were offered in English and Spanish, and that included one class series that was in partnership with the Children's Council of San Francisco. So it was new parents mostly that were there, and we were so excited to get those devices out into the community. And finally, although I'm cheating a little bit, this was truly 2Q, the One City, One Book event. I thought it was only fair to mention that all the awesome work and planning for this event happened in the first quarter. And I know many of you got to enjoy a really moving presentation by Nigel and Erlon on our stage with Piper Kerman. And it was so great to just see the audience packed, just standing room only, and then still have another 300 on Zoom and YouTube. So that was amazing. I'll be backing up all the things I said because Randy's going to come up and talk statistics in a minute. So, proof.
Okay. Good evening, Commissioners. Randy McClure here again to walk you through several data slides that show how some of our key performance indicators have been tracking through the first 4 months of FY23. We'll call it quarter plus because the RSA team works very hard to have these data available as close to real time as possible. So by way of a reminder, on the format of these slides, we'll give you a headline takeaway at the top, and then I'll call your attention when relevant to a red oval showing the data on the accompanying graph. So here on this slide, we've seen this before. We're looking at our visitors since we reopened to the public back in May of 2021. You can see that visits are still trending up, in fact, an 11% increase across the system versus the last 4 months of FY22. Okay, here we're looking at our circulation trends, and you can see that we are flattening out here a little bit, but we remain robust. We've logged over 1 million circulations in 4 of the last 6 months, which again, if this trend holds entirely for the fiscal year 23, could, I won't guarantee it, but it could result in our highest circulating year ever. And here we have our use of the public computers within our libraries, and the last 4 months here have shown a 7% increase in sessions versus the prior 4 months of activity. Here we're looking at Wi-Fi usage. It's similar trend line. It's slightly but heading up with a 10% increase in connections versus the last 4 months of the last fiscal year. Michelle alluded to this earlier, and we have some new programming data we'd like to share, keeping in mind this is a quarterly view. There's a little bit more of a lag on this data. So we're looking back at the last 5 quarters, which does include Q1 of fiscal 23, and it roughly matches with our reopening a year and a half ago. So the blue on the graph represents in-person programming across our system. For example, children's story times are mostly in person at this point. And the orange on the graph represents virtual programming. And it's easy to see here that programming is storming back as we executed over 2,000 programs in Q1, which is an 82% increase over the previous quarter. And then similarly, program attendance. So it's also growing in a big way. Q1 saw a 150% increase versus Q4 of last year, and most of that increase was a result of increased youth programming. So all in, we reached approximately 65,000 patrons with our programming services last quarter. That concludes the slides I have for you today. I'll be around for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, team. And this is the cherry on top of the city librarian's report, and it's just a continuation of the fact we're back. So 2 days ago in this Correct Auditorium, we had a capacity crowd. It was a very special event. You may recall back in March, you all commemorated the release of the first quarter in the American Women Quarter Program Series at the Western Addition Branch Library with Speaker Pelosi. And so this past Tuesday, we had the next quarter released by the U.S. Mint, honoring Anna May Wong, the trailblazing Chinese American actress of the 1930s, who successfully traversed both the silent film era into the modern motion picture era. One of the few actors or actresses to be able to do that successfully. It was a special event. The energy was palpable. We had a documentary screening of her life, followed by a panel discussion. This event was held in partnership with the Asian Pacific American Heritage Foundation of San Francisco, the Center for Asian American Media, also known as CAM. The director of CAM, Stephen Gong, facilitated the panel. We had actress Joan Chen, as well as an up-and-coming Asian American actress, Krista Yu. It was a phenomenal panel. Everybody left with the new Anna May Wong Quarter. Everyone was delighted. And it was just really a special event. Our patrons were super excited. And that concludes the City Librarian's report.
Thank you very much, City Librarian Lambert. This was an incredibly rich, very inspiring series of presentations about the extraordinary work that the library does throughout the entire region. It's really impressive and so awesome, in the true sense of the word of awesome. So before we open this up for comment and discussion and questions from the commissioners, we will open it up for public comment. We'll begin here in Correct Auditorium and then move to any participants who want to make public comment via WebEx. So public comment is now open here in Correct Auditorium.
Good afternoon. Peter Warfield, Executive Director, Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com, and P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California 94117-0544. First of all, I want to say that the library certainly is doing a lot. It's certainly recovering in one form or another from COVID. And the complete closures that started COVID, Friday the 13th of March, 2020, I remember it well. So whatever I say is not intended to take away from anything that you have heard that you and maybe we consider to be good. But there is, I think, problematic partial discussions and omissions of context. So the first thing to be said is there's rarely a description of improvements or of comparisons with pre-COVID performance, so circulation or attendance. And that's unfortunate because I think you should be aiming for restoration of what you had prior and improvement on it. So to say that presumably because a bunch of libraries opened and now there's more attendance and now there's more circulation, well, of course, there's likely to be that when you have more facilities open and so on. I also want to point out the strength of actual visits in your program attendance and in your library attendance and in circulation. You're not showing that, but that, I think, is clearly what's contributing. When you have a few libraries open and the others are not functioning at full strength, obviously there's going to be an improvement when you increase what you've got. So things that have been left out of the annual report: reduced hours, especially in the evening. You're continuing to go with the reduction of numbers of days when a place is open in the evening. You used to have 4 nights a week, now it's 3 nights a week. There are many empty desks. So when we hear all branches, the main library, no, not all desks are fully staffed, and that's a problem. There are empty desks at times and so on. I'd like a lot to hear more about books. I think that the statistics show books and personal visits are very strong. That's not shown. You're spending fortunes on e-materials, which are not accessible always to everyone, but books are. And you're not talking about the tremendous touting of e-materials that the library continually does, which it does not do for books. So it's not an equal comparison.
Thank you very much. Is there any further public comment here in Correct Auditorium? Seeing there's no further comment, I will turn to operations. Mr. Smith, is there anybody in the queue who would like to make public comment via WebEx?
Madam President, there is no one currently in the queue awaiting comment. I will pause briefly to allow people to join. Madam President, there are no additional commenters.
Thank you very much. Hearing there's no further public comment, either here in Correct or on via WebEx, public comment is now closed. So I welcome fellow commissioners to ask questions, make comment. Commissioner Mall.
I just want to congratulate the staff. I know we say that often, but all of this is really just mind-boggling, the work that went into the first quarter programming. I just love all the programs at the library, and I don't even know how you can, I applaud that you quantified it all with the data and the photography and the descriptions, and I really, really love this. I just think this should be T-shirts and hats and on buses. I just love it. I love the simplicity of it. I love the variety of it. And I think this should be like our banners, because it really says it all. It really says it all. And I'm just so happy that things are back on track and improving and growing. And it's nice that everything is quantified with all the data, but you can just feel it in the air now. So especially after the win on whatever that date was, last week, it seems like a year ago. I just applaud all the work that you're doing.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Mall. Any other comments or Commissioner Lomax Garaducci?
That's okay. I like Lopez too. I just wanted to acknowledge, obviously, what Commissioner Mall had said. But one thing in particular that I have to say I've never seen in a public library, actually I've never seen outside of a tuition or fee-based service, offering adolescents an opportunity to have professional drawing skills. I worked at an art and design university for several years, and I know the cost that it takes for those students to build their portfolios. And by the nature of how, of who has access, it becomes an issue, equity issue, a social equity issue, a racial equity issue. So basically, a certain type of young people have a shot at the best art schools in the country, when there's a lot of talent that never gets the opportunity to develop their portfolio, which all the admission officers are looking for the quality, and they're looking for specifics. And so it's such a great level setter. I just want to say that because I know how hard it has been for young people with deep talent to be noticed and to get access. It's a system. You got to have a great portfolio if you want to get in. So thank you so much for making that opportunity available.
Great, thank you so much. Any further? Commissioner Lopez.
The Lopez now. First of all, I want to say congratulations, Terry. That's great. I think I just want to echo what Mary had said and Susan, but one of the things that I do appreciate and I see on all the programming is the diversity of activities, not just culturally, but age, capacity, like the drawing was something that caught my attention, but also the sewing, and then the breaking the digital divide, that offering computers to someone that is not just giving them computers, but also offering classes to a population that we tend to neglect oftentimes. So I'm really, I've always been impressed, but now I'm just with this quarter report, knowing that, the staff is dedicated to look at all levels, from childhood to adulthood, and the contributions, but also the partnerships. I have to say that the partnerships, the collaboration you have built with other entities in the city and our local communities, it's just amazing, because that's what makes the library great, and that's what makes San Francisco great. So thank you all for the wonderful work that you do. And I just want to ask, who was the designer of the report? The graphics are really pretty. Kudos to them. It's really fun to get this type of report.
Great. Any other, Commissioner Wong?
I'll just throw one comment here, which is I actually did want to push back on some of the commentary provided in public comment. There is, of course, a time and place for us to do this sort of multi-year analysis of where the library is and all that, right? Like we did that analysis. It was a few meetings ago. We had a very deep discussion about the underlying drivers. We all unpacked what facts changed about the city and county in San Francisco during COVID, right? We did all that, right? The goal of this is not that. It is to recognize that there are a lot of people working hard every single day to make this place the best place they can make it, right? And by that measure, this is phenomenal, right? Certainly, I think everybody wants to be better. Everyone wants our city and our institutions to be better. We get that, right? But we can separate the two. I just don't want us to lose the plot here. And I think if we can celebrate our staff, our leaders, our partners, that's what this is to me, at least. And so I wanted to say thank you again to everyone who had worked on this, who contributed to this, and who do the work every day, because that's what makes the library what it is.
Thank you very, very much. I think that ends our discussion, but I just want to add, would you like to say something?
I wanted to just, sorry, Kathleen. It's okay. I wanted to thank everyone, but I'm sitting here dying of guilt because I was very remiss in not thanking the RSA team, without whom this annual report could not be possible. I give them a giant list of the data that I need, and they deliver it, and they're great sports about clarifying the data. And so, Randy, thank you to your team, Zaire, Yoon, Graham, all of you. Thank you so much. So I'm sorry I missed that in the first round, but now it's on the public record.
Yeah. And his data is so good, I don't have any questions on it.
Whoa. So I just want to conclude. I want to thank my fellow commissioners for making such beautiful and impactful statements and testimonies about the great work. I think one of the things that's just so amazing to me is that we get these numbers like over 1 million of this and thousands of this. But what really happens is on an individual level, one by one, whether it's 6 kids in the class doing the drawing, or whether it's 10 kids, 6 or 8 adults learning about how to use a computer, the kind of level of detail and attention that the library staff gives to each person individually is what really makes this so special. I am just so excited because I think about these kids that we were seeing all the pictures of and all the data about, and they're going to be able to vote for the Library Preservation Fund in 25 years. And if we had their vote now, we would be probably at 99.9%. But it's just wonderful to think about these young kids growing up with libraries at the center of their lives, and people, as they age, understanding that the library is still for them and really with them. So I just want to thank Terry and Catherine, Randy, Michelle, and Kate for the extraordinary presentations and the efforts you lead here on behalf of all the staff at the library. So thank you. So now we move on to item number 4, which is a item for discussion and voting, which is the approval of the October 20th, 2022 minutes. So before we have commission discussion, we will open it up to public comment here in Correct and then move to WebEx. So public comment is open here in Correct.
Peter Warfield, Executive Director, Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com, and P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California 94117-0544. These minutes, unfortunately, demonstrate the ferocious ignoration that the Library Commission and the library management, for that matter, are applying to what the public is saying to you about the performance of the library and the directions of the library. I've certainly said that I appreciate the good that the library does. I wouldn't be putting as much effort as I do into what I do if I didn't. But let's get into the minutes. On public comment, it's a joke. What you've said is a summary of what I said. I announced that I had 3 key issues. One was your violations, or your city librarian's violation of open government law, which 2 days earlier the library acknowledged in public meeting at Sunshine Task Force that it was in violation. And that's not good for the library not to be open in a democratic society where you're supposed to have open government, and the library is not practicing it at all times. The debookification was my second point, and I said there's unequal access, and we talk about staffing equality. What about equality of service for the so-called vulnerable populations, minorities, poorer people, older people? You're literally removing titles that you could have as books and giving only electronic access for folks who don't have it and are likely not to have it for a long time and would have inherent difficulties, including, for example, disabled. And the third thing I said was your inappropriate touting of toxic, privacy-breaking social media that the library is doing constantly. And that's a danger to the public and especially younger folks. Your endless touting of Facebook. I mentioned Twitter. and there was somebody within Twitter that was giving information, personal information, to the Saudi Arabian government. And that could end pretty poorly for the people that were betrayed as to their privacy using Twitter. But you tout it over and over again without even providing, and I said this, without even providing any warnings or guidance to the public. And that's just an example of your ignoration and basically silencing what you're hearing from us and anybody who's critical, and the minutes are one of your methods.
Thank you very much. Any further public comment here in Correct Auditorium? Operations, Mr. Smith, will now turn to you. Are there any people wanting to make public comment on this agenda item via WebEx?
Madam President, there are currently no commenters in the WebEx queue. I will pause a moment to allow additional commenters to join. Madam President, there are no additional commenters at this time.
Thank you so much. Hearing there's no further request for comment, public comment is now closed, and we move to the commission discussion and action on this item, number 4. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the October 2022 commission meeting?
I move.
Seconded.
Was that Commissioner Mall who moved it? Okay, and second by Commissioner Huang.
I'll take the roll call. Commissioners, please say aye or no when I call your name. President Wolf?
Aye.
Commissioner Lomax-Garrarduzzi?
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez?
Aye.
Commissioner Bolander?
Aye.
The motion passes.
The motion passes unanimously. We now move on to item number 5, which is adjournment. And we will open public comment before our discussion and possible action on this item. Public comment is now open in Correct Auditorium.
Peter Warfield again, Executive Director, Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com, and P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California 94117-0544. And I give that information because the folks who might be online listening, we haven't heard how many there are because of technical problems. Other people might be interested in getting in touch. And that's one thing that can happen at a public meeting when it's fully public. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I think you should have and insist on having, before you adjourn, a part of the agenda that comes pretty much at the end. You used to have it, and many bodies have it still. What you would like to have on future agendas. And I see some nodding and some disinterest. For example, one of the members, Commissioner Lopez, talked about programs for folks who are often neglected. Excellent. That's something we've been talking about as well. And we've talked about who is neglected by the emphasis on electronics and the victims of the very things that the library keeps touting, like toxic Facebook, especially for kids, like Twitter, and so on, without any instruction or any assistance in understanding what they're getting into when they get into that which the library keeps touting and recruiting essentially for. I did want to mention in the minutes that there was something left out. One of your members actually said at one of the points that he appreciated what I had said with regard to a report on success of Summer Stride. And I think that that's something that actually ought to be on a future agenda item. And that is Commissioner Huang, Vice President Huang, said at the last meeting, actually mentioned my name because I had noted that the completion rate for Summer Stride had been substantially improved over a number of years, I think including pre-COVID. And I had said, I'm glad to see that. How about looking into what contributed to that and building on whatever success that represented and whatever the reasons were for that? And that would be another thing to talk about in the commission at a future agenda item as to what were the reasons for successes like that one and what could be done to build on that and improve even further. That's what I was saying, and that the minutes certainly left that out as well. So you should have that agenda item in future agendas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further public comment here in Correct? Seeing there's no further public comment here, I turn to operations. Mr. Smith, is there anybody on WebEx who would like to make public comment?
Madam President, there are currently no commenters in the WebEx queue.
Hearing that there are no further requests for public comment, we are now closed for public comment, and we move to commission discussion and action on item number 5, which is adjournment. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'd make a motion to adjourn our meeting.
Anyone to second?
Second.
So Commissioner Lomax-Garducci made a motion, and it was seconded by Commissioner Lopez.
I'll take the roll call. Commissioners, please say aye or no when I call your name. President Wolf?
Aye.
Vice President Wong?
Aye.
Commissioner Mall?
Aye.
Commissioner Bolander?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously. The meeting is adjourned, and I wish everybody a happy, healthy, delicious, and wonderful Thanksgiving holiday ahead, and look forward to seeing everybody back here in December. Thank you.